Okay, should we start?
एक मिनट में स्ट्रीमिंग शुरू होने दीजिए फिर देन वी विल स्टार्ट.
Welcome to everyone in this session. I am requesting Dr. Anita Sondi for welcome our guest, Professor Prashant Singh, for this session. Dr. Anita is our senior faculty in our college. Over to me.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana. Good afternoon to all of you. So this is our 5th day post-lunch session on the 6th day of the short-term course on National Education Policy organized by CPDHE in collaboration with Bhaskaracharya College of Applied Sciences, University of Delhi. So let me introduce our speaker for the session, Professor Prashant Gupta. Professor Prashant Gupta, he is a senior faculty member in finance at Indian Institute of Management, Trichy. Professor Gupta has a deep and rich experience of industry, academics, research, training, and consultancy. During his illustrious career, he has shouldered many administrative responsibilities in various schools and institutions of management and finance. Professor Gupta has been actively involved in training of the cream of the Indian industry. He has conducted various training programs for more than 40 companies involving over 4,000 middle, senior, and top level executives. And these companies include almost all Maharatna and Navratna public sector undertakings like ONGC, IOC, Coal India. In addition, Professor Gupta has also organized international training programs and has trained more than 1,000 foreign government officers and executives of private companies of around 55 countries. He has also trained more than 400 academicians, including professors, principals, and vice chancellors of over 80 universities and institutions. Despite such a hectic professional life, Professor Gupta has gone on to present research papers in various conferences all over the world and has handled numerous projects and consultancies for both private and government organizations. It is really our privilege to invite such a multi-dimensional personality to deliver us a lecture on IDP challenges for challenges for the national education policy, and sir will also enlighten us on the issue of autonomy for higher educational institutes. And I would also like to add that in spite of a personal loss that Professor Prashant Gupta has faced, he has graciously agreed to be a part of our training session. So we are thankful to you for agreeing to be a part of this training program. And I welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
So please unmute yourself.
Professor Prashant, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope now I'm audible.
Yes. Sir.
Thank you very much, Anita. And thanks for the nice words you have spoken about me. But, after all, we all are teachers. And so I'm a teacher, I'm a learner, and like you, we all are into the same boat. We are learning while we are teaching. So I'm just a teacher, and thanks for inviting me here. It is my privilege and pleasure to share my thoughts with you. And as always happens, you all are welcome to give your suggestions, because I was going through the topic IDP in remote institutions. So as such, for remote institutions, there's nothing separate that is mentioned in IDP. May I share the screen?
Yes, sir. Archana ji. Yes.
Yeah. Is it visible?
It is visible, sir, but it is coming cropped in a cropped manner.
Crop.
Yes.
It is fine now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So before moving on to the discussion topic, and while I was discussing with Professor Abnish also, that autonomy needs to be covered. So while going through the thinking process, how to do that, so I find a mix of both, because IDP for remote institutions, as such, there is not any separate thing. So from the IDP, what can be the challenges which are especially applicable for remote institutions? We'll discuss something on that. And then to address that, how autonomy may help, that's what I have tried to work here. Now, since one topic of IDP is already there, and a lot of discussion already happened, so I'll just glance through certain slides, what NEP is actually talking about. Primarily, they're talking about the structural changes and regulatory reforms. If you look at these, they are finally pointing on holistic and multidisciplinary education. I'll just quickly glance through. So regulatory framework, structural framework, they are at the micro level, but at micro level changes are also needed and suggested. So they would be at institutional level and also at individual level, right? There's a saying, hum badlenge, jag badlega. So first we need to change ourselves as an individual and institutional level, then only the whole map of education is going to change. Now, just a minute, I just need to adjust this. All right, I think it's better now. Fine. So when we talk about the structural reforms, we are primarily talking about the frameworks and guidelines, how this education we can change into multidisciplinary and holistic. So they're in structural reform, they're talking about creating large multidisciplinary universities, which they call MERU, right? An idea is to create either the large entities or clusters or knowledge hubs. And then they have also talked about creation of National Research Foundation, NRF. They're also talking about using technology grid at a structural part. Regulatory framework also, NEPs suggested to go for a overall reform. And there, instead of having multiple regulatory bodies, they have suggested one regulatory body, HECI. And under HECI, they're talking about 4 verticals. One is National Higher Education Regulatory Council. One is National Accreditation Council, which primarily look for accreditation process. Higher Education Grant Council, which will look for the grants and financial assistance to various institutions. And then General Education Council. Please ignore this E, GEC. That will take care of this. So this is how they are planning in the structural side. Micro level, if you talk about institutional level, so faculty capacity building is one of the most important parameter there. We need to look and work on that to create holistic and multidisciplinary curriculum. That is also, so we need to change curriculum also if required to make it more multidisciplinary. Then need to assess the networking. Institutions need to go for a better networking. Equity and access is also very important, that whether the accessibility of education is for all wake of society, all the groups of society or not. And then accordingly, we also need to build infrastructure. Individual level, the first thing, that mindset change is needed. Many times we come with the mindset that is a government university, government institution. Once we get into that, now my lifelong job is secure. Now whatever I do, I don't do, nobody is going to check or tell or discuss about me. If anyone tries to do that, then a lot of agitations and other things happen. So it's actually a very tricky issue how to deal with that. As a human tendency of us, we talk something different, but when it comes to practice, sometimes we deviate from that practice. So a very challenging task. I don't know how it is going to be tackled, but mindset change is one very at the individual level. Then acquiring necessary skills, time is changing. the way when we were students, the way we got education at a school level or even at a colleges or higher education now, entire landscape has changed. So that change is also there. And then collaborations, it's a time for collaborations. Wherever we need, we should be open to collaborate with others. It's a time for multidisciplinary research. It's not that you are doing research only in your area. Can you tie up with other relevant areas and do some meaningful, socially relevant and applied research? So key principles, if you look at when we talk about the institutional development, certain attributes like outcome focus. So the question arises, what are we trying to do and why are we doing this? So the approach to answer that is realize the vision of the institution. How many institutions have vision and mission? So a broad level exercise is also needed at the institution level to frame your vision, mission, and then your all activities, including your curriculum, should be aligned with that. When you go for the accreditations, you're talking about NAC or the national accreditations, gradually we'll have to move to the global accreditations. Any accreditation process, first thing they check is whether your systems, your policies, your curriculum, is that addressing to the vision or mission that you have decided. So that's one thing that we need to work. Context, when you talk about the context, then where do we start? Shuruaat hum kahan se kare? So implementation of NEP is planned in the phased manner because you can't change in a day. Rome can't be built in a day. So it takes time. So phased manner we are talking about by 2030, then 2035, and finally till 2040. So this is how, in gradual manner, they have planned this change. Participation, who do we work with? Who are going to be involved in that process? So here it's not only, management or faculty. Here the approach is a stakeholder approach where all the stakeholders, all relevant stakeholders need to be taken care. And education policy has focused on that. How you can include all stakeholders. So even students, society, everything, even government, regulators, management, all are part of this. And all need to contribute and all need to be taken care while designing for this change. Accountability is also very important. So when we will know that what we have accomplished or whether we have accomplished the goal or not, right? So for that we need commitment, because unless this commitment is not there, accountability not come. This is something which should come from within, and it's more related to individual. Time frame, how long should it take? So realistic target without losing the opportunity. Again, IDP framework has given that flexibility that we need to decide, and we need to looking at our own system, our own strengths, weaknesses. We can decide our own framework and target timing that when and what we want to do that. So IDP is a strategic roadmap for institutional development, right? And you have to take care of, when you talk about IDP, the initiatives, what initiatives you are going to take, assess your own progress. In management, we use this word management by objective, where you decide your target and at the end of the year, you are assessed with your own target. So we fill up our, what we are planning. So at the beginning of the academic planning, we need to give a detailed plan that throughout the year, what we are planning in terms of teaching courses, in terms of consulting, in terms of research, in terms of other collaborative activities. Then at the end of the year, I'm not judged by anything else. I am judged by the plan I had submitted 1 year before, that this is you wanted to do and this is you have done. So your performance appraisal is based on your own plans. So this is the same approach here in IDP also. It is like you plan and then your progress will be assessed based on that. Reach the goals set therein, which could then become the basis for further public funding. And once you achieve certain targets, then you are eligible for certain public funding. So that funding agency, when I talking about that structural change, regulatory changes, where this funding agency is one vertical of higher education council. Now, if you talk about the components, then curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, they are the important component. I'm not focusing much because one session on IDP you had already had. I would request on any of these topics, if you have any query, we can discuss in Q&A. So similarly, then faculty professional development is also important, which is part of your IDP, that how you will train, how will you develop your faculty. So recruitment, performance assessment, promotion, and professional development, all this would be part of that. Then accreditation for quality and self-governance and autonomy. Those institutions which are not autonomous, affiliated to universities, but they are large institutions or many universities. So how to attain that autonomy? For that, they have introduced this graded autonomy with the graded accreditation. So as you achieve one level, then you aspire for a second level. And with each higher level, you are given more autonomy. So attain the highest level of accreditation over the next 15 years. The target is after 15 years, we will have good number of self-governing degree granting institutions. Even the colleges will be given autonomy to decide their own curriculum, own courses, and providing degrees. That's the ultimate target. And IDP, when you're planning for IDP, it should take care of that. Accreditation is the key. And then accreditation is based on adherence to basic norms, public self-disclosures, good governance, and outcome. Outcome in terms of academics, outcome in terms of research, outreach, and student support, etc. Then access and equity, it should be available for all, especially the socially and economically disadvantaged groups, SEDs. So building a student-friendly ecosystem would also be part of the IDP, setting up counseling centers, providing facility, etc. for those who actually need that. Funding will be determined by the IDP and the progress made there on their implementation. So it is going to be outcome-based thing. What you have planned, what you have achieved, based on that, your performance will be judged, and accordingly funding would be given. So if you are meeting your targets, if you are meeting your objectives, then obviously funding would be easier for you. And funding may come in the form of research fund, development fund for launching new focus areas and expanding quality programs, and fund for scholarships. So approach or the process is involving all stakeholders. And who are those stakeholders? So I'm going from top to bottom. First thing is the board. Governors, governing board members, those who govern the institute. Because first you need to train them. They need to be aligned and understand the concept. Only then it will be percolated down. Here at IIM Trichy, we are involved with various faculty development programs funded by TQ World Bank Group under the Ministry of Education efforts. Now, we are going for different training programs for faculty members, programs for principals, vice principals, and directors of the institutions, and then vice chancellors and the BOG members. Now, the majority of the programs, the outcome when we discuss with the faculty members, senior faculty members, the thing is, this is we are convinced we want to do, but the only thing is our sometime board do not allow or director do not allow. So the idea is how you can align all in one set up so that all are working for the same thing. So whole stakeholders approach is must and needed. So right from board to your directors, the principals, to the faculty members, to the administrative staff, all should be aligned. And then industry and government should support. It's not only the government's duty, even industry has a larger role. And that's the peculiar difference you will find in Indian education system and in the education system in developed industry, developed countries. In developed countries, industry is more aligned and education is designed as per that, and they also invest a lot because they are going to get executives or human resource from the education institutions. So you can't ignore industry, and obviously government is there as a regulator and facilitator and provider. So all need to be in aligned. Steps. So first, profiling of the institution need to be done. All this you have already done. So SWOT analysis, that is strengths, weakness, opportunity, and what is C? Challenges. Or you say SWOT analysis. In management, we call it SWOT, where C means challenges is replaced with the threats. So you do your SWOT analysis to identify what are your inherent strengths, what are your weaknesses on which you need to work on, what are the opportunities in front of you, and you can take on those opportunities, and what can be the probable threats. Based on that, you identify the areas of intervention, right? What NEP is requiring. So a very careful SWOT or SWOT analysis is needed at all institution level. Generally, people just take it as a mere formality, but it is very, very important thing, because unless you identify the right gap, you can't find the right solution. So SWOT analysis is actually, it's very, very important part in IDP. And then based on that, you devise your long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals, something which you can immediately do, or in near future, 1 or 2 years, you can do something you can do in 3 to 5 years, something which you will achieve in longer duration, say 10 to 15 years. So those goals we need to set, looking at our SWOT analysis based on our strengths and weaknesses, based on the opportunities and threats that may come across. So objectives and specific targets with timeline for each area of intervention need to be planned and jotted down, so that we can always, so it's a kind of a performance matrix, and the chart is there, and then we need to, now every day we need to check where we have reached, how much is to be there, whether we have achieved the target within the given time or not. That reminds us where we are going ahead. And is there any change in policy? Is there any change in strategy needed or not? So these are the generally 3 things you do: gap analysis through the SWOT, and then you design your aspirational goals that will finally lead to the multidisciplinary education. Now, when we talk about IDP for remote institutions, is not going to be different. Remote institutions also need to do the same thing. Only thing is, when you design your aspirational goals, in remote institutional, aspiration goals would be different than the institutions which are there in the developed areas, like in cities or in metro cities and so on. So certain changes will be here when you are dealing with the remote areas. Remote areas require certain specific things which they face challenges, and those challenges may or may not be available at semi-urban, urban, or maybe the metro areas. So strengths, weakness, opportunity, challenges that we had already discussed. Only thing is, these are the internal factors. Strengths and weaknesses are your own thing. What are your own strengths? What are your own weaknesses? To a certain extent, they are controllable. Few things you can control. If you know your weakness rightly, the first thing you should be, with open mind, we should understand actually where we are lagging behind. If we just close our eyes or blindfold and then we think, no, everything is fine, then there's a problem. Then it's very difficult. So understanding this is needed, and these are the controllable things. Opportunities and challenges are not in your hand. They are generally uncontrollable factors. So your target should be to strengthen yourself, acquire more and more skills, and control your weaknesses. Try to minimize your weaknesses. If not zero, then at least reduce them. And then be open to any opportunity which is arising. After pandemic, yes, tough time, but a lot of opportunities also existed for e-learning space. And many companies have taken advantage of that. Online examination, online evaluation, and so many things which otherwise was not existing, or even if it was existing, we were not using. Many of us have started doing that. So opportunities and challenges is not in our hand. We need to be very careful, scanning the environment, what's happening, and with the changing environment, we need to devise accordingly. This also, you might have done, short-term, mid-term, long-term goals related to curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, research and innovation, right? So this is how you plan for IDP. Now, when you talk about IDP for remote institutions, so what's going to be different? What's going to be different? May I have some views from the participants? What do you think? When you plan for remote institutions, what is going to be somewhat different, or what challenges they may face?
Sir, may I?
Yeah, anyway, please.
Yeah, sir, remote institutes do not have any fulfilling resources in the form of faculty, in the form of content that the teachers have to teach, or many kind of discipline that they may not have in their institutes. So these are some kind of challenges that remote institute face. That's it, sir.
Yeah, very right. So when you look at that, the challenges may be related to their location, right? Sometimes many things may not be accessible by them. Accessibility is a problem, or it may be the availability of resources. That's what Payalji, you were talking about, right? Resources related to academic leaders, maybe faculty, maybe staff. You don't have adequate resource or the adequate, workforce that is needed, not only in faculty, otherwise in staff also. Then largely your student would come from the socially and economically disadvantaged groups in the rural areas. So when you're designing your pedagogy, when you're designing your academic plans, when you're designing your IDP, you have to take care that which is the larger section of the student and from which area that is coming and what are their specific needs. So sometimes many vocational things, you may have to plan where vocational things you turn into education. That's what the skill university concept has also come up, right? So you require a different kind of infrastructure also. But top of all, I think the most important thing is change in mindset. If you come with that mindset, being in remote area, how will I survive? How will I do? Yes, you do face challenges. You have limitations in terms of certain resources. Yet there are many examples, despite working in very discrete, different geographical area, institutions have developed. Like in Rajasthan, I think that one university which is for women, I'm forgetting, is Vanasthali. Vanasthali is near Jaipur, not even in Jaipur. They are slightly, 40-60 kilometers outside the Jaipur. And in that remote area, they have developed an institution which is providing world-class education. In our management education, this Accelerate, one of the top institutions, generally ranked second or third after the IIMs, ABC. Now, Accelerate is again, when they started around 40 years back, they were again in a remote area, right? So remote area may have certain challenges, but yet if the mindset is there, we can develop good institutions in remote areas also. So for that, how to overcome these challenges? You need support from other HEIs. In NEP also, it is promoted, better cooperation among the HEIs. So networking, you need to network with others, take help of other HEIs. There are various institutions which time to time provide support and which they are established and they provide support. So various IITs, NITs, IIMs, and similar institutions. You can always catch hold of that. And NEP is actually providing a platform and start utilizing that benefit. Certain tailor-made policies and framework is needed for that. So in the planning part, you have to take care of that. Freedom of taking decisions based on specific situation. Institutions working in remote areas need certain freedom, certain flexibilities to take certain decisions which are very different than the institutions situated in metro or bigger cities. So autonomy is the key. And when you talk about the autonomy in NEP, what they are talking about is the graded autonomy. And the concept of graded autonomy is incorporated, which talks about to encourage healthy competition between universities and reward those institutions which perform better than the others. So start using, in the beginning, some autonomy and later more autonomy, and devise things for your specifically required things. Now, under graded autonomy, what they're talking about, the academic, administrative, and financial autonomy will be given to the colleges on the basis of their accreditation status. So you may look for this autonomy, which otherwise is not available, taking certain decisions related to academics or administrative or financial. So what they have talked about is 15 years time that I've earlier also mentioned. In 15 years, they want that institute should use this period to get a better, autonomy. And for that, yes, we'll have to work first. First, we'll have to prove ourselves, get first level of autonomy, then second, then third level of autonomy, and so on. But autonomous college, they are free to make use of the expertise of the universities, departments, and other institutions to frame their own curriculum. They can devise methods of teaching the way they want, examinations and evaluation. You can decide your own system. They can recruit their teachers according to the existing procedures. Now, this is very important, especially for the rural or remote area institutions. How to recruit, and in recruitment, do we get certain kind of flexibility and freedom? So with the graded autonomy, and as you move on the higher levels of autonomy, this will also be provided to the institutions. So these are the things which you can think of, benefits of autonomous college status. What autonomous college status will provide you in terms of benefits. So you may have your own administrative staff, faculty, designing curriculum, deciding college admission process, deciding your fees. Because yes, commercialization of education is again discouraged in NEP also. And it is said that education should not be treated as profit making motive. But at the same time, you need a sustenance. And for sustenance, you need adequate money. If you look at IITs, IIMs, we are not charging less fees. We are charging good amount of fees. But at the same time, that is needed. We are not making profit out of it. But that is needed to support the kind of infrastructure, the kind of systems we have provided. You need money for every damn thing. So that fixation of fees is also important. Again, it's challenging. Certain institutions misuse that autonomy. So certain checks and balances are also needed. And that's why there is a yearly assessment of your progress and assessment of your policies and your systems. So there would be a regular audit also, and strictly that need to be done, so that if you are increasing the fees with the reason, it should be justified also. Otherwise, it should not be allowed. So independent teaching learning framework you can develop. So again, tailor-made requirements, the kind of students you have, rural students, the students having, so multidisciplinary also includes the education in their own language. It's not necessary that in rural areas you can put English as a medium of instruction. So you should have the flexibility of designing your curriculum in the local language, a regional language, and it is already started. Even engineering programs are being designed like that. Certain management institutions are also planning to launch programs in different language. So that freedom is there. Deciding your exam pattern, it's not the fixed exam that university has given you, kind of assessment, and assessment has to be done only on that basis. Like here in IIMs, we have full autonomy. The faculty decides which. So we have a parameters, okay, that minimum 3 or 4 parameters has to be there. Well, what are going to be those parameters? That flexibility is with us, because not each course has the same. Humanities course, particularly when you are discussing, human behavior, organization behavior. Now the assessment and judgment of student caliber with a fixed examination pattern used for accounting and finance course and used for behavioral course, that does not work. That's not right. So if you get this autonomy in judging different courses differently, then that will make better sense, and then we can actually leverage the benefits of autonomy. So evaluation and judgment parameters, grading system of own choice, awarding degrees to students, that also comes in our hands. So which kind of degree, and many times if you are coming up, then you have to approach to university, find out the process. Can we give this degree? New courses are coming in. Many institutes and universities have started new courses in new areas like in blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And in finance, there's quantum banking is coming up. So these things, when the market is changing, requirement is changing, if autonomy is there, we are swift. Fast decision making can be done, and we can save time. if we are applying it to university, getting permission, and then by that time, there's already, some others have already launched the course and programs. So that autonomy will also be useful, helpful for the institutions. And then planning best practices for the institutions. So these are the various advantages that an autonomous college can obtain. But autonomy comes with certain accountability also. I'll come to that later. But how institutions can achieve autonomy? So the question is how we can do that. So we should focus more on innovative and new ideas. Profound education with choice-based credit system now, NEP is allowing you to have that credit-based system, right? Choice-based. So you can develop courses in modules, and that kind of flexibility should be given to institutions, especially institutions working in remote areas. This exit norms should be very flexible, which your NEP is talking about. That exit should be flexible. So a person is doing something, suppose a 3-year degree program, but he attends only 1 year and then he has to go for some other thing. So he accumulates certain credits, and later on he can again come back and join. So in 1 year, you may give him a certification, 2 year, probably you can give him a diploma. And if he completes 3 years, probably you will give you a degree. That kind of autonomy you can enjoy. And that can be meaningfully utilized, suiting to the requirement of that particular remote area, which kind of courses, which kind of things you're talking about. Then ERP in higher education for administrative roles. That is also one very important criteria, how good we are utilizing and leveraging the technology. And believe me, in accreditation systems, when you are talking, because all autonomy will come through accreditation, which level of accreditation you have achieved. And an accreditation, if your systems are supported with technology, in terms of certain ERP systems are there, and then you have a learning management system and other things, then definitely the process of accreditation becomes easier for you and faster for you. And you attain a better levels of accreditation in a lesser time. So you utilize that. And promoting e-learning and hybrid education. That is also a need of the hour. In pandemic, we all have seen, right? I am in touch with various my colleagues and friends working in industry. Earlier, for every damn thing, they were traveling, particularly international travel or travel at domestic level. Now, even the pandemic situation is under control. Many countries have, lifted the limitations of or the sanctions and restrictions of quarantine and all. Still, people are not traveling. They say now we are saving a lot. So someone sitting here in India now with Zoom and other facilities, you can have a meeting. So why to travel and waste over 3 days or 4 days on international travel? Same thing can be happened here just by devoting 1 hour or 2 hours. Many times, many executives, including I am handling executive education here. For certain meetings, I need to travel from Trichy to Delhi or Mumbai. For a 1 hour meeting with CMD or the director of finance or director HR, I'm traveling and wasting my 2 days and 3 days. Now we have stopped doing that. Now we simply request for a Zoom meeting and we do that. I save my time, they save their time, and what is the cost is almost negligible. So if we use the technology and if we use e-learning and hybrid education mode, then that is also going to be counted in your accreditation process, and that will also help you in achieving better accreditations and then better autonomy. But as I said, autonomy, it's not only autonomy we are looking for. If more autonomy will be given, then more accountability will also be there. And they should go hand in hand. If I'm looking for autonomy, I have to be accountable for the systems, right? So what is suggested is that, appropriate graded accreditations institutions may constitute a BOG. Then the BOG of an institute will be empowered to govern the institute free and external interference. So the role of BOG is to give them a protection from the external interference. The BOG shall be responsible and accountable to all stakeholders. It's not that whatever we decide, it's for our own consumption. No. So accountability would be to all stakeholders. So institutions and faculty will have the autonomy to innovate on matters of curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment within the broad framework of higher education qualifications. through a suitable system. Again, that 15 years is that's what expected. Time will tell whether we achieve that in 15 years or we need 20 years, but this is what government is planning for. And when you talk about the effective governance and leadership for higher education is needed. When you're talking about BOG and BOG should be responsible and accountable for all stakeholders. So it is a top-down approach we are talking about. So for that, we need effective governance and leadership in higher education. Identifying right kind of a leader and adopting to the best practices in governance. And best in governance means more transparent, open system. So that need to be done. So upon receiving the appropriate graded accreditation that deemed institution ready for such a move, a BOG shall be established. Equity considerations, the BOG of institution will be empowered to govern the institute free of any external interference. Is many things we have already covered in the last slide. Government is talking about doing it by somewhere around 2035. So BOG shall be responsible and accountable to the stakeholders through transparent self-disclosure of all relevant records. Now, self-disclosure is very, very important. I'm a man of finance, and here also when we talk about, our accounting systems, now we are aligning it with the international financial reporting standards. We call it IFRS. Now, what is the main difference when we are having our own accounting standards? What IFRS will provide? IFRS focuses on more transparent system. That means more and more disclosures are needed, which otherwise earlier we were not that open and certain disclosures we were not doing. Same is here. When we talk about open governance or best practices governance, then those transparent systems need a proper disclosures of all relevant records. Why we can't put our BOG meeting minutes on website? I'm surprised many of the top institutions, it is mandated, but many of us don't do that. What is there to hide, right? So this mindset need to change, even at the level of top. So all records, systems, procedures should be open and transparent, and they should be disclosed properly. So it will be, the board will be responsible for meeting all regulatory guidelines mandated by HECI through the National Higher Education Regulatory Council. So the key strategic areas which you can look for in terms of developing the IDP for remote institutions, what are the academic specific suited academic programs, what kind of research, each area may have a requirement of a specific kind of a research, right? If you go to a particular area where there are artisans, where the handicraft society working for handicrafts, you may devise a research for that kind of that. Certain areas are good in different kind of specific activities. So accordingly, you can devise. Accordingly, you can look for a human resource. What can be the incentives for the human resource when they are joining? So you need to have a proper incentive system. Learning resources, which kind of learning resources are needed? So they are the broad areas when you're designing your IDP, particularly for remote institutions, and it is also applicable for normal institutions, that these are the areas where you can focus and then you can develop your IDP. So student services and assistance, collaborations. Apart from that, you need a strategy to ensure equity and inclusivity so that all sections of society you are taking care of, particularly the SED segment. Infrastructure requirements plan. You should come out with a detailed infrastructure requirement. Today you need what, tomorrow what will be needed, after 5 years what will be needed when you are expanding. What are the levels of governance and leadership, which kind of leadership you are talking about, you're looking at. You should be clear which kind of leadership you need based on your institution requirement. And mechanisms for evaluation. Only making system do not work unless there are proper checks and balance to assess whether what you wanted to do, you have actually achieved that or not. So strategic review is needed time to time because time keeps on changing. 4 years back, nobody, or 2 years back, or 2.5 years back, nobody could thought of that a pandemic like we face the situation, the whole world will collapse, whole world will stop. Nobody predicted, nobody could have thought of that, right? So time to time, you need to modify and align your strategies with the changing environment. So It's dynamic. Though we plan today for next 15 years, but it's not going to be static. It has to be dynamic, and with time, it needs to be changed. And according to the changes happening in this environment, you also need to modify and align to make them abreast with what's happening around you. And a proper financial planning is also needed. All that is, you need finance for that. So from where you are getting that finance, you should be very clear about getting funding, from where and how much funding you will get from which agency and how you will do that. So at the end, what I say that finally, if you mix the autonomy and the IDP, you would be looking at these different aspects. So academic excellence, embedding a culture of research, because that research culture is very important. Generally, research is like a mandatory thing. Sometimes it is forced because it is associated with your promotion. But can we create a culture of research? If we do that, then that is better. Assuring transparent participatory governance, curriculum development, community engagement, faculty development, student development, reconceptualization of academic autonomy, and resource planning. These all are the ingredients which are needed in a good institutional development plan. And with autonomy, you can work on each of this area. So with this, I think around 45-50 minutes I was told, so it's done. And rest we can discuss if you have any specific queries, anything you have in mind, anything you want to suggest where you find what I have told, where there is a scope of improvement. So all things are welcome. Your discussions, your suggestions, your queries. Over to you.
Thank you, sir, for a very detailed and in fact, a very structured lecture on IDP. And now I would like to invite some questions. So I have some questions in the chat box. Dr. Anita has asked how autonomy is different from privatization.
Privatization and autonomy are two different concepts. Privatization means you are allowing a private party to acquire certain government institution, right? Autonomy is not that. Privatization may lead to autonomy, privatization may not lead to autonomy. Many systems, and particularly if I refer from companies, because I'm visiting various PSUs particularly, I find if you look at the governance structure, that is much better in government system rather than private. Because what happens in private, the one person itself is wearing different hats. I'll not quote any industry, but you take example of any private company, how decisions are taken. Now I'm just trying to answer this autonomy part. Sometimes autonomy is to show. In private, it's not necessary that autonomy is there. How autonomy works, you tell me. I give you one example. And this I'm quoting from my personal experience. I was in Delhi before shifting to Trichy, and it was a very nice Sunday evening. I was sipping tea with my wife. It was raining outside, and suddenly my wife is stuck on one news. And she said, "Look at that." I said, "What's that?" So news was Mr. Mukesh Ambani gifted personal jumbo jet 747 to his wife Neeta Ambani. I said, "Okay, fine. So what should I do with that?" No, you don't understand. He has gifted his wife something on her birthday. And you poor fellow, you have not given anything to me in the last 10 years. And I'm talking about somewhere 2008-9. Anyways, I tried to counsel, but matter was out of my control. And finally, I had to settle, by purchasing a second-hand car on her birthday, which was approaching after 3 months. So that bar was here in my heart. I was doing some project for Reliance, and I was going through their details, and I found Reliance, apart from 3-4 small aircrafts, 30-seater, 40-seater aircrafts, they also have a 2 jumbo jet. A jumbo jet is a big aircraft. Why 2 jumbo jets are needed? Luckily, one of my friends was working there in corporate office as a senior vice president. So I called him up. I said, what is the story behind why 2 jumbo jets are needed? I understand 1 jumbo jet. So he reiterated the same thing what was mentioned in the reasoning, because you need to give reasoning to BOG before getting approval, and then it goes to AGM. Same reasoning. We are global conglomerate. Many times emergency meetings happens, and then our directors need to travel. So this, I mean, our directors, we want to make them safe and push luxury travel. So we have these jumbo jets. I said, well, why two? He said, no, many times there are parallel meetings and so on. Anyways, I was not satisfied. After 2-3 months, I was in Mumbai, so I met with him, and then I said, now you can tell me if you're not ready to tell me on phone. And then now I'm just underlining how rules are bent. This jumbo jet is actually utilized by Mrs. Neeta Ambani only. So what was touted in media, that's a personal gift by Mukesh Ambani to Neeta Ambani, to some extent was correct, because this plane, one particular plane, flies only when Neeta Ambani travels. But the catch, is it wrong? See, legally it is wrong. How a company's plane can be roped in for one individual? It's not possible. But it is not wrong because Neeta Ambani on paper is one of the board of members. She is one of the director. Now, rule is this plane will travel on the requirement or the meetings for the board member. And Neeta Ambani is a board member. Unwritten rule is this plane will travel only when Neeta Ambani will travel. But whenever Neeta Ambani travels, a board member is traveling on paper, right? So when you talk about autonomy and privatization, autonomy is not that. Privatization may lead to more concentrated powers in the hands of few. Autonomy is entirely different. Autonomy is empowering your all stakeholders, making your processes transparent. Everyone can question, everyone can ask. More democratic way of doing that. Not like in companies. What happens in companies? What happens in your parliament? How your rules are framed? How new law is framed? It is proposed in cabinet. Cabinet you can compare with company's board, right? Now, some of the board member propose something, cabinet or the minister propose something, cabinet discuss on that, and cabinet approves the decision. When the decision is approved, it goes to the Lok Sabha, and then voting happens, and if it is approved, then you have Raj Sabha and then president. But in company, what happens? If it is anything is approved by the board, it goes to AGM, annual general meeting, where all shareholders are called, because owners are shareholders. And then shareholders approve it, then decision is taken. Very democratic, transparent way. Now, please differentiate between privatization and autonomy. In a public sector company, there are board members, there are independent directors, they discuss, and a lot of discussion happens because independent board members nothing to do with anything else, right? What happens in company? Structure is same. They are the functional board members, they are independent board members. So many of you or some of you might be independent board member in some of the companies. Now tell me, how independent are independent directors, how independent they are actually? What happened to Satyam? One of the best governed companies suddenly turned into worst company. What happened? And you know who were the independent directors in Satyam? And Satyam wrote in 60% independent director, only 40% functional directors. Even then that fiasco happened. Why? And if you look at the list of the board members who were independent directors in Satyam that time, that included the Dean of Indian School of Business, Hyderabad Dean, Professor Rao, Professor Krishna Palepu, one of the very senior professor of Harvard Business School. He was one of the board members. Two very senior retired bureaucrats who have a very, very honest track record. They were also part of that. One IIT professor was part of that. Even then fiasco happened. Why? The reason I tell you. Fiasco happened 11-12 years back. You know what was the sitting fees of board member, independent directors? 1 crore per annum. Even 1 crore is very high amount today. Think about 10-11 years back. A poor professor like me working, I am sitting in a board seat as an independent director, and I am getting a 1 crore check, which is even today maybe 3-4 times higher than my salary, right? How independent I am? When owner is talking about do this, have I dared to say no? If I say no, then tomorrow he will kick me out from the board seat and someone else will be appointed. So autonomy and privatization are two different concepts. Please don't mix them and don't confuse with them. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. There is another question from Dr. Satyam Dwivedi, and he asked that how would a uniform fee structure for students and pay scale of teachers will be maintained across autonomous colleges?
First thing is, autonomy is regarding deciding the fees. Regarding the pay structure and all, also not very clearly they have talked about that uniform system will be followed or differential. But here, please understand one thing. There has to be one minimum standard. Fees can never be same. Uniform fees is not possible. If you're talking about autonomy, if you're talking about deciding your own fee structure, it's not possible. Setting up of an institution and looking at the expenditure in metro like Delhi and Mumbai cannot be compared with the institution which is set up in the remote area of Rajasthan or in a UP, in a village or in a semi-urban. Their infrastructure requirement, cost of setting up infrastructure, cost of living, everything is different. And accordingly, you have to charge the fees also from which society you are getting your students. The majority of the students are coming from the rural and semi-urban areas. You can't say I'll charge 10 lakh rupees, right? So there has to be a balance. I'm absolutely in agreement that autonomy will not lead to uniform fees. It is not going to happen. Fees will be different and it will be designed and decided based on the requirement. Also, it depends on your own brand equity in the market. If you have created a brand, even working in a rural area, you may charge higher fee, possible. And it is going to be market driven only. And if it is a market driven, then compensation are also like that. You tell me, many of us are working in government system. Do you think government system compensation is same? When you're talking about uniform structure, even today we don't have a uniform structure. University, state level universities, salaries are different if you compare with the central university. Central university, if you compare with the NITs, IITs and IIMs, fees is different. Even if you compare between IITs and IIMs, you will find IIMs faculty members have more opportunity to earn because of the consulting and training and other activities. So uniformity can never be made in both teaching as well as that. Idea is you should have pay structures so that they are sufficient. You can attract good talent. Boss, if you're not paying good, people will not serve. Why there's a scarcity of good teachers? Because as a teacher, when I train a student, I get maybe 25-30 lakhs in a year. My student gets placed, the first placement he gets of 30 lakhs and 80 lakhs in the first place. Within 5 years, he's getting a package of crore. Now you tell me, who comes to teaching? Two kinds of people. I'm sorry, but first category is those who have no other option, so they shift to teaching. Or rare or less proportion is those who come teaching because they have a passion for teaching. Those who have passion for teaching, they stay. Those who have not passion for teaching, they take teaching as one of the career option out of the various available. Nothing was available, so landed in teaching. They always crib. Compensations can never be compared with industry. But idea is education policies, when you're deciding IDP, when you're planning for an institution, if you need good resource, you have to pay them well. Again, it's market driven. If you will pay them well, I'm coming from an institution, I left that, came to IIM, but I was getting much higher salary than IIM. Why? Because that is a private institution. They charge very high fees. They are able to get a student and they want to retain good people. So they pay around 35-40% higher than IIMs. So again, it is market driven, where you are, what is your equity, what is your goodwill. Autonomy will never lead to same pay structure and same fees. That is not going to happen. And my opinion, I'm not saying it is going to happen, means I am deciding. It's my opinion. It's very difficult, very difficult.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir. There is another question. How effective hybrid model be considering digital devices and connectivity continues to be an issue?
Can you just repeat, sir? I could not hear, so some disturbance.
How effective hybrid model be considering digital devices and connectivity issues?
This is a problem. Yes, we face, like just now when Professor Goswami was telling, and first part I could not hear. Yes, that is there, and with time only it will go. And whenever you start any new thing, certain hiccups are always there, and connectivity is certainly an issue. But I hope as we migrate from 4G to 5G, and then more availability of bandwidth and internet space, that thing will be. See, this is not something which cannot be changed. This can be improved with certain efforts that can be done. But what about the experience? Can you completely change the experience of offline versus online? No. So hybrid gives you both kind of facility. Like we are doing certain programs recently we have introduced where we are having 3 campus modules. So 1 week, 3 times in a year we'll call them. They will be here. So we'll have a face-to-face interactions. And rest on the weekends, because majority of them are executives. They work. So it's not possible to engage them for a longer duration in a full-time course. You have to devise as per the requirement. Since our course is designed for executives, so we have devised like that. Accordingly, every institute would do that. But if you are offering e-learning or hybrid programs, idea is not that you don't do the offline courses. You will be continuing with offline. Along with offline, also include these kind of courses so that your outreach is increased. You are catering to more number of students. Those students who cannot come, those executives who are working, they cannot join full-time program. So idea is inclusivity. Can we include them also as part of education system? Maybe a full-time program you complete in 6 months or 1 year. There you can complete it in a 2 years or 2.5 years or 1.5 years. Based on the number of hours requirement, devising it on weekends, and sometime you're calling them at your institute. Idea is that. It's not replacing offline with online. Idea is along with offline, can we also include them?
Sir, there is a question from Dr. Deepali Sharma. Sir, would branded and higher priced quality universities lead to greater disparities in a country as heterogeneous as India? And so if we go for autonomy, are we moving higher education out of public sector and social objective?
Again, across the globe, you will find variety of opinion and variety of thought process. Individually, what I believe, this differentiation, I'll not say disparity, I'll say the requirement, and based on requirement, what you are doing. A branded, when I say if you have created a brand, maybe my communication was not proper, but I'm not talking about creating brand like Gucci and then you charge high. My point is, if your institution has a fame, if you provide a better facilities, then obviously for providing better facilities, you have to spend more money. And even if it's not a commercial organization, you will have to spend more. And when you're spending more, obviously your fees is going to be slightly higher. And that's forget about the NEP and forget about the future. Even today, do you think all institutions in India, all government institutions are charging same fees? Do you think a disparity is there? No. Then everything is a solution. I come to the specific part. IIMs are charging high. Sometimes, yes, it is debatable, and we can discuss that why a government institute should charge high. But the money they spend on various things is also different. We are calling guest lectures from across the world. We need to pay. Every time you can't request them that they are coming only for the social cause and they're not charging anything. Many people charge, right? Let us not shy away from the reality. How many times you can go for free temping? For education purpose, as a teacher, we do that. How many times you expect that all industry persons will devote their time when they're spending 2 hours, they are losing their 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees. They charge money and you have to pay that. From where you will fund that if you're not charging that? Idea is not that you create the disparity. Idea is if you are doing something which requires resources, which requires spending, you have to cover up that. That model cannot survive for long where everything is borne by the state. That state will bear the cost. It's not possible. Even in the 100% communist countries, I've traveled, you please go and check, even in China, even in Russia, there are universities who are charging higher fees, much higher fees than the other universities. So it is a reality We should not shy away from that reality, and it's nothing to do with the disparity. We need to take care of the accessibility of this costly education to the socially and economically disadvantaged groups. So what happens? I give you our example. In IIM, the moment they get letter, in IIMs also there is a difference. There are IIMs which are charging 10 lakh rupees for 2 years course. We are charging around 15 lakhs. There are IIM Ahmedabad and Bangalore, they are charging 28 lakhs. Was almost double of us and almost 3 times of the new IIMs. Do you say it is disparity? No, their expenditure is altogether different. About those students who cannot afford, what happens to them? I think our concern should be to those, whether these people would be able to access that high cost education. Yes, they can. Right from day one, they get the offer letter. Banks are floating and flocking around them. And banks are giving them easy loans. Now, what's the harm in that? I have nothing. I know one of my housemate's son, he got admission in IIM Bangalore after doing engineering. They were not having any money. I said, don't worry. Banks were giving loan. What is the harm if bank is giving you loan and in just 2 years of your job, your son or daughter is able to repay that loan? Where's the problem? So you need to facilitate and think about the real problem. And I don't think it is creating any disparity. Then the whole word is, then what is the salary you're paying to your peon and what is the salary you're paying to a housemaid? Then why don't you share 50% of your salary to housemaid? Do away with the disparity. Let us talk on the reality, real grounds. What is available, at what level it is available, and what efforts you're putting for that, everything associated with cost. So commercialization, no, but covering the cost, yes. Sustenance otherwise will never happen. You talk about sustainability. If you're not doing that, then you are not sustainable. And after some time, we'll face problems. We all are from education. Just check how many UK universities, US universities, abhi se 15 साल पहले और 20 साल पहले, they were liberally funding education. आप मुझे बता दो अब कितने universities हैं globally जो अब state universities which are funding and providing scholarships. It has reduced drastically. Even state universities from UK, I'm in touch with certain universities. Earlier, my stint was in Gautam Buddha University. There we went and tie up. State universities are struggling to get admission. Why they are flocking to Asian countries? Because they need money, because the state funding is getting reduced. We have to be self-dependent. That's the reality if you want to sustain. Over to you.
So you were talking about like graded autonomy, and you talked about levels of autonomy. So what are the different levels of autonomy?
That I think a detailed work is need to be done. But when you talk about, from my limited experience, what I have seen in AICT, AICT has also done that graded autonomy. One of my ex-director was involved, so I have some idea about that. Probably what is going to happen, though again, it is to be deliberated upon. It's not yet completely decided. It's the policy. Now we need to make policy and implement it. But what is going to happen is what level of autonomy. Suppose you get NAC B or B++, so they will associate your autonomy with that grade. Like if you have the highest autonomy, then your autonomy is for financial, your autonomy for completely designing the course, designing the fees, and so on. What AICT has done, the NB accreditation happens. Based on the accreditation grade, they have made the 4 categories. Those who do not get any autonomy, lowest category, right? So even curriculum, you need to take permission. For fees also, you need to take permission. The next level of autonomy, they have given to design and restructure your course and evaluation process. You can do that. Next level of autonomy, they have given to decide to certain level of fees. So autonomy in deciding the fees. Highest level of autonomy is you need not to go for any equivalence. AICT will not visit every year. For 5 years or 10 years, you are given autonomy, means you decide your own course, you decide your own fees, but only condition is you have to maintain that quality parameters. So that is going to happen, but exact detail as of now not yet decided. There's a time to come. Probably they will come up with, suppose university system, NAC accreditation, this much grade, this much autonomy, this much grade, this much autonomy, and as you scale up in grades, your autonomy will increase. That's the idea.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other question? Any participant who would like to ask the question directly? Okay, sir. So I guess there are no questions, no more questions. And if we have some questions, then perhaps we will mail them to you.
Yeah, I'm available, no
queries.
problem.
Because at times, we are going through other lectures, and then we have some questions that, okay, sir has talked about IDP, and with reference, some other reference, there may be some questions. So if we have some questions, so we will definitely mail it to you and have our queries satisfied. And on behalf of Bhaskaracharya College, CBTHE, and all the participants, I would like to thank you for your detailed lecture on how to go about to carry out institutional development practices, like all those macro and micro changes which we have to carry out. And you discussed the key principles and SOC analysis, strategic steps. So your lecture was a very detailed one, and I personally, I was not aware of various kinds of things which go on in the development of institution. So I'm very thankful, and from the behalf of all the participants and CPTHE and BCAS, we are very thankful for your lecture. Thank you, sir.
I'm also
Thank
very
you, sir.
thankful
Thank you, sir.
for being the captive audience and asking questions and bearing me for this 45-50 minute session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I take leave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so now we'll take a break, and we will join by 3:40 p.m. for the next session.